Weinberg, could you raise your hand?
Yes, sir.
Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give will be true under the pain and penalty of perjury?
Yes.
Thank you. Please have a seat. Good morning. Could you please introduce yourself to the jury and spell your last name?
Sure. My name is Mitchell Weinberg. Last name is spelled Weinberg.
Dr. Weinberg, where do you work?
I work at the New Hampshire Office of the Chief Medical Examiner, which is based in Concord.
What is your title there?
I am the Deputy Chief Medical Examiner.
And what are the duties and responsibilities of the Deputy Chief Medical Examiner?
My primary job duties relate to conducting and overseeing medical legal death investigations, including the performance of postmortem examinations such as autopsies.
Before we get to what an autopsy is, Doctor, do you have any education, training, and experience relative to your position as a Deputy Chief Medical Examiner?
Yes, I do. So after attending university and earning a bachelor's degree, I went to medical school, graduating from medical school in 2008. I then completed an anatomic pathology residency at Ohio State University, completing that part of my training in 2011. And then the last stage was a forensic pathology fellowship conducted in Baltimore, Maryland at the Maryland Office of the Chief Medical Examiner, and completing that in 2012. So at that point, I'd completed all of my schooling and training, and I was ready to enter the workforce as a staff forensic pathologist. And I did so, taking a job in Alberta, Canada in 2012, holding that position until 2020, at which time I relocated to New Hampshire to take this position at the New Hampshire OCME.
Thank you, Doctor. You mentioned forensic pathology. I'll ask you first, what is pathology?
Pathology is an area of medicine focused on the study of human disease. It's a very broad field of medicine. Pathologists are often called the doctor's doctor because generally pathologists do not interact with patients directly, at least not very much. Rather, we provide diagnostic information to other physicians so that they can provide treatment to their patients.
So that is pathology. Could you tell us what forensic pathology is?
Sure. Forensic pathology is a branch of anatomic pathology that is focused on the application of principles of pathology and medicine as they can apply to areas of the law and also to some extent to areas of public health.
Okay. Does forensic pathology, or is forensic pathology concerned at all with determining cause of death?
Yes, that's a core function of any forensic pathologist's job. It's overseeing medical legal death investigations, and one of the primary reasons is to determine why an individual has died, i.e. the cause and manner of death.
So when conducting one of these medical legal investigations to determine the cause of death, does that include a review of not just diseases but also trauma or injuries?
Yes.
Dr. Weinberg, what is an autopsy?
An autopsy is a surgical-like medical procedure involving an examination of a deceased individual. It involves an external examination as well as subsequent internal examinations to document the presence or absence of various disease processes as well as the presence or absence of various injuries or traumatic findings.
Dr. Weinberg, what is the general procedure that you follow when you conduct an autopsy?
The general procedure is that a body comes into the autopsy suite. I start with documentation of the body as received into our facility. I then undress the body, clean the body so that I am getting a good look at the cleaned naked external surfaces of the body for documenting those various findings. Then the procedure continues to an internal examination, which is examination basically from the head down to the pelvis in a standard forensic autopsy. So that, again, to be clear, means opening the chest, abdomen, examining the organs internally, again, for the presence or absence of natural disease processes, the presence of or absence of injuries, and also examining the neck and head contents for those same reasons.
Dr. Weinberg, does your general process for conducting an autopsy include a screening in the way of toxicology?
Yes, not at that same exact moment of time. So during the course of the autopsy, on the day of examination, those specimens are collected, and then those specimens are sent to a laboratory that our office contracts with for toxicology testing, and then I usually get the results back 1 to 2 months later.
And what is the purpose of having blood sent out for testing?
It varies from case to case. Sometimes toxicology provides the answer to the cause of death, such as in drug overdose cases. Other times, it provides additional information about the circumstances. So, for example, in a motor vehicle incident, it's also just, I guess, to be clear, it's standard procedure in pretty much every office that cases involving trauma, a toxicology screen is performed.
Dr. Weinberg, how do you document the results of an autopsy or the conduct of an autopsy?
There's a few different ways. So one is just with handwritten notes. It's literally nothing more than me writing notes on sheets of paper to document the findings. I also document my findings photographically. So that's a big part of modern forensic pathology practice. Lots of digital photographs of pertinent positive and negative examination findings. And then probably the most formal part is for each case, I produce a typed formal written report of my examination findings. And at the completion of that case, I sign and date that document.
Dr. Weinberg, you mentioned that you take photos. Is it common for police officers or law enforcement officials to also be present when an autopsy is conducted?
It depends on the nature of the case. Actually, probably for the majority of my cases, the answer is no. But in certain kinds of cases, cases that may involve future criminal charges, then yes, it is common for law enforcement to be in attendance, and often he or she will take photographs for themselves as well.
Dr. Weinberg, as part of an autopsy, do you determine something called cause of death?
Yes.
What does it mean to determine the cause of death?
The cause of death is the underlying disease process, injury, or intoxication that accounts for an individual's death, no matter how rapidly or how drawn out the time process involved. So examples of causes of death are medical issues such as various forms of cancer, strokes, various forms of cardiovascular disease, as well as injuries. So things like stab wounds, gunshot wounds, asphyxial injuries such as hanging or strangulation. Those are all various types of cause of death that I can put on a death certificate based on the totality of my examination and investigational findings in a case.
Dr. Weinberg, could you tell us how many autopsies have you conducted in your career?
I can't tell you an exact number because I don't keep that precise a log, but at this point in my career, about 14 years post-fellowship, it has to be just to either side of 3,000 at this point.
Dr. Weinberg, of those roughly 3,000 autopsies that you have conducted, how many involved gunshot wounds?
Hundreds.
Dr. Weinberg, have you been qualified in court as an expert in forensic pathology on previous occasions?
Yes.
Could you tell us about how many times?
Probably approaching 100 at this point, in the various jurisdictions in which I've worked and testified.
Is that that include being qualified as an expert in forensic pathology in the state of New Hampshire?
Yes, multiple times at this point, yes.
Your Honor, at this time, the state moves to qualify Dr. Weinberg as an expert in forensic pathology.
No objection.
He shall be so recognized.
Dr. Weinberg, did you conduct an autopsy on the body of Caitlyn Naffziger on March 1st of 2024?
Yes.
Where was this autopsy performed?
At Concord Hospital in Concord, New Hampshire.
As part of that autopsy, did you determine Ms. Naffziger's height and weight?
I did.
What were those?
If I may at this point, may I refer to my case file, which has a copy of the autopsy report?
Yes, please refer to your report for purposes of refreshing your memory.
Sure. So Ms. Naffziger was 60 inches or 5 feet tall and 114 pounds.
Dr. Weinberg, I'll ask you to just close your notes.
Sure.
Dr. Weinberg, you talked about the number of ways that you document an autopsy, including photographs and then a report. Did you do those things with regard to Ms. Naffziger's autopsy?
Yes.
Did you conduct an external examination of Ms. Naffziger's body?
Yes.
What, if anything, did you find?
Well, along with just the routine things that I document in every case, things like hair color, eye color, scars, tattoos, presence or absence thereof, things like that. The most significant thing is there were two very obvious defects to the head, which I quickly was able to recognize as gunshot wound injury.
You mentioned that there were two defects that you described as a gunshot injury. Could you describe, did you assign any sort of classification to those injuries?
Yes. During the course of the examination, ultimately I was able to determine that one of the defects represented an entry wound and the other defect represented an exit wound. Therefore, I was able to determine that there was a single gunshot wound to the head with both entry and exit wounds present.
So I'd like to ask you about that. What is an entry wound?
An entry wound is the term that a forensic pathologist will use for the defect, the injury, the hole, where the bullet enters an individual's body.
And following that, what is an exit wound?
So same sort of thing, except now we're talking about from where the bullet exits the body. Every gunshot wound has to have some sort of entry. Not every gunshot wound has an exit. Some gunshot wounds have a retained projectile, but that was not so in this case.
How are you able to determine the difference between an entry wound and an exit wound?
Largely, it is a product of my training and experience at this point. Simply put, they look different, and it is my training and experience that allows me to make that distinction. Most of the time, it's pretty straightforward for an experienced forensic pathologist to differentiate an entry wound from an exit wound. They look different, they have different characteristics, different features, and that's just externally. There are also internal features that can help with that distinction when necessary. Everything in this case did align with the ultimate way I classified, as one side being the entry wound and the other side being the exit wound.
Dr. Weinberg, you mentioned an entry wound and an exit wound, and then you classified them collectively as a gunshot wound. Is that fair to say?
Yes, that's correct.
So is it your opinion that that entry wound and that exit wound were caused by the same bullet?
Yes.
Could you tell us where those wounds were?
Yes, and again, I just want to refer to my notes because I don't want to switch the laterality.
Sure.
Excuse me, not my notes. I'm actually looking at the formal autopsy report. So in Ms. Naffziger's case, the entry wound is on the left side of the head, on the temporal scalp, which basically means the portion of the head above the ear. So approximately in that general region where I'm pointing on myself, just for demonstrative purposes to the jury, but for the written record, I'm pointing slightly above my left ear. That was the entry wound in this case.
Where was the exit wound?
The exit wound was basically just on the opposite side. So on the right side, also a little bit above, the right ear.
Dr. Weinberg, were you able to determine the bullet's course of travel through Ms. Naffziger's head?
Yes.
What was it?
The bullet passed through the skull and then basically passed through the brain. The report documents the specific anatomic structures in the brain, which I can get into if necessary, but essentially the bullet passed right through Ms. Naffziger's brain.
After passing through her brain, did it then exit through her skull again?
Yes, so passed through the left side of the skull, through the brain, and then through the right side of the skull, and then exited the body through the skin.
Did you recover a retained projectile from anywhere inside Ms. Naffziger's body?
No, I did not in this case.
Dr. Weinberg, you told us about the path that bullet traveled, in your expert opinion. Did you observe any internal injuries to Ms. Naffziger associated with that bullet?
Well, yes, the injuries to the skull, the dura mater, which is the covering around the brain, and the brain were all injured by the gunshot wound in this case. They were injured by the bullet.
And could you describe just what was your diagnosis of those injuries for the record?
You mean
What were the injuries?
go specifically through the parts of the brain? Sure, I'm again going to refer to my report here, but the bullet passes through the left temporal cerebrum, cerebral white matter, and deep nuclei, such as the basal ganglia and the thalamus, the right frontotemporal cerebrum, and the right, and then out through the skull. So, again, those are just specific anatomic regions of the cerebrum, which is kind of the main portion of the brain that people think about when you think of a picture of the brain.
Did you observe anything along the lines of hemorrhaging or contusions to parts of Ms. Naffziger's brain?
Yes, there was bleeding, which is absolutely expected, associated with any sort of traumatic injury in a living person, including a gunshot wound. There were also areas of associated bruising on the surface of the brain. These are all, just to be clear, injuries that are directly associated, and findings, I should say, associated with the gunshot wound.
Dr. Weinberg, were the injuries to Ms. Naffziger's brain from that gunshot wound
surface? And there's basically three classifications or three groupings that I make when I assess range of fire in a gunshot wound case.
Dr. Weinberg, I believe the question posed to you was, what is range of fire?
Sure. So I think I was at a point where I was explaining that as a forensic pathologist, we classify range of fire into one of three categories. And it, again, relates to the distance between the tip of the weapon and the skin surface at the time of discharge. So the first category is contact, which basically means the gun is up against the skin at the time of discharge. The second grouping is intermediate range of fire, which basically means from a few inches away up to about 3 feet. That's the intermediate range of fire, and then beyond that is a distant range of fire, or indeterminate, or, as the phrasing I use, no evidence of close range firing. So intermediate and contact are considered close range firing. That is, the tip of the weapon is less than about 3 feet from the tip of the skin.
Dr. Weinberg, I'm going to ask you again to define those three categories of fire.
Okay. So the first category of range of fire is contact. which means the tip of the weapon is basically up against the skin surface up to maybe a couple of inches away. Intermediate range of fire means that the gun tip is a little bit further back. Usually it's defined as somewhere between 6 and 36 inches away from the skin surface. That's the intermediate range of fire. And again, in combination, contact and intermediate are lumped as close range firing. If you don't see any of the markers of either contact or intermediate range of firing, the gunshot wound is defined as an indeterminate range of fire or distant range of fire, or the phrasing I use in my reports, no evidence of close range firing. And again, that generally means that the tip of the weapon is at least 3 feet away or more.
So Dr. Weinberg, when you determine that something is in that last category as not close range or indeterminate, you can't tell if something is 37 inches or 37 feet, can you?
That's correct.
You mentioned markers that you use to determine whether a gunshot wound falls into one of these 3 categories. What are those markers?
Those markers are the presence of soot around a wound, as well as imprints from the muzzle or other parts of the gun, such as a sight or a firing pin. Those are things that are generally seen in the contact range of fire. Intermediate range of fire is classically defined with the presence of something called gunpowder stippling, which are basically these tiny little pinpoint marks around a gunshot wound from gunpowder particles striking the skin. But once you get beyond about 3 feet or 36 inches, those markers generally are not going to be present, and therefore, as I said, you have no evidence of close range firing, and you can opine that the gun is 3 feet or more away from the skin surface at the time of discharge.
Dr. Weinberg, with regard to Ms. Naffziger, did you observe any of those marks that you described as evidence of close or intermediate range firing?
No, no such markers were present in this case.
So in your opinion, were the wounds that you observed on Ms. Naffziger in that third category of indeterminate or distant fire?
Yes, in my opinion, the entry gunshot wound in this case shows no evidence of close range firing.
And again, that means 3 feet or more.
Correct.
Dr. Weinberg, I'm showing you a series of 4 images marked for identification at stage 21A through D. Could you please take a look at those?
Sure.
Dr. Weinberg, what are these?
These are a small sampling of the autopsy photographs that I took during Ms. Naffziger's examination. More specifically, there are 2 photographs each of the entry and exit wounds at various magnifications or at various stages of the examination process.
Dr. Weinberg, do these photos, stage 21A through D, fairly and accurately represent the state of Ms. Naffziger's wounds at the time you conducted her autopsy on March 1st, 2024?
Generally, yes. There has been some alteration, and specifically what I mean is these wounds were in parts of the head where there is hair. So it's very standard in my line of work to document those wounds both as is, i.e. with the hair there, with the hair still present, and to clean and shave the skin around the entry wounds and exit wounds when there is hair present. So the clearing of the hair around the wounds that you'll see in some of these photographs, I did that as part of the examination. That's what I mean by manipulation, but otherwise, yes.
So just to be clear, Dr. Weinberg, these photos show a fair and accurate representation of Ms. Naffziger's wounds during the autopsy you conducted And that includes both before and after you made those alterations you described by shaving or cleaning up some of those areas.
Yes, that's correct.
Your Honor, at this time, the state moves to strike the ID on states 21A through D.
No objection.
The ID may be stricken with respect to 21A through D inclusive, and they shall be considered as full exhibits.
Dr. Weinberg, you can see up on the screen, and you have one there as well. This is State's Exhibit 21A. Can you please tell the jury what they're looking at?
Yes, this is a medium magnification view showing the left side of Ms. Naffziger's head, and this wound specifically, this picture specifically is showing the presence of the entry gunshot wound after I have cleaned it up and cleared away some of the surrounding hair.
And again, Dr. Weinberg, that cleaning up, it was so that you could better examine this wound?
Exactly. This is just very standard forensic pathology practice throughout North America. You examine the wound as is, but you also clean it up for this exact reason. Sometimes there are features that are better seen, and I don't think I need to get into it more, but
Thank you,
that's
Doctor.
why.
I'm now showing you State's Exhibit 21B. What is this?
This is essentially very similar to the previous photograph, except at a higher magnification. Again, it's very common to take photographs at multiple levels of magnification, just to show different features. This is a higher magnification view of the entry gunshot wound.
Now, this wound appears to be, for lack of a better term, fairly clean. There don't seem to be a lot of sharp edges. Is that a hallmark of an entry wound?
This is a very classic appearance of an entry gunshot wound. Yes, it is. It's fairly rounded in nature. It is somewhat punched out because the skin does actually get physically punched out as the bullet passes through. This is a textbook entry gunshot wound that I would use for teaching purposes.
Now showing State's Exhibit 21C. What is this, Dr. Weinberg?
So this photograph is showing now the right side of Ms. Naffziger's head. There's been a little bit of cleaning at this point in the photograph, but there is the hair obviously hasn't been removed yet. Above and in front of the right ear, there is the defect that I've previously spoken about, and this is a photograph of the exit gunshot wound in this case.
Just one more. Dr. Weinberg, what are we looking at here?
Now, so same perspective as the previous photograph, but a little bit higher magnification, and also now there has been cleaning of the wound and removing of the hair to facilitate better documentation. Here you can see the features of the exit gunshot wound, much more jagged, ragged, not that clean circular or ovoid type appearance of an entry gunshot wound. There's also a little fragment in the wound that I believe is a bony fragment from the skull having been injured. So that's what we're looking at in this photograph.
Thank you. Dr. Weinberg, other than the gunshot wounds that you've described, did you observe any other injuries to Ms. Naffziger during your external or internal examinations?
No,
Any other injuries or trauma in other parts of the body?
no,
Any evidence of significant natural disease?
no,
Any significant findings from the results of Ms. Naffziger's toxicology screening?
no.
So, Dr. Weinberg, in your opinion, what was the cause of death for Ms. Naffziger?
In my opinion, Ms. Naffziger's cause of death was a gunshot wound of the head.
And it's the gunshot wound that we've been discussing and that you just described for us using pictures?
Correct.
Thank you. I have no more questions.
Okay, thank you. brief recess right now. We'll be back at 10:15. We'll get restarted at 10:15. Again, I instruct you not to discuss the case amongst yourselves, and if anyone does so, please indicate so to the court security officer or bailiff.
Yes, sir.
Good morning, Dr. Weinberg.
Good morning, ma'am.
Just a few questions.
Sure.
So you made a specific finding that there was no evidence of close-range firing, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And this means that you did not see the markers often associated with close-range firing, correct?
Correct.
But you cannot say with 100% certainty that the gun was not fired within 3 feet.
No, I suppose not, particularly considering that there was hair overlying the entry wound, but again, I see no such markers around the entry wound in this case.
But you can't say 100% that it wasn't within 3 feet.
There are very few things as a forensic pathologist that I can say with 100% certainty. It is not my opinion that the range of fire is less than 3 feet in this case.
Well, you cannot tell this jury the exact distance the gun was when it was fired, correct?
No, I certainly can't. As I said on direct, once you kind of pass that 3-foot barrier and there are no visible signs of close range firing, there's nothing I can do to distinguish whether the range of fire is, say, 40 inches or 50 inches or 80 inches, et cetera.
And you weren't there, right?
Where?
At the apartment when the shooting happened, correct?
No, of course not.
No. So you didn't see what happened, right?
No, of course not.
And you didn't see where the gun was when it was fired, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And you didn't see what Caitlyn was doing, correct?
Correct.
You didn't hear what she was saying, correct?
Correct.
You don't know where Dustin was when he fired it, correct?
Correct.
And you don't know if it was fired in self-defense, right?
That is not my role to assess.
Or in defense of others? And Dr. Weinberg, you do not know if it was fired in defense of others either?
I have no opinion on that matter. My role is to examine Ms. Naffziger, determine her cause and manner of death, assess injuries. It is never my role to assess that kind of thing, justifiability, self-defense, any of those questions. That is not my role as the medical examiner or as a forensic pathologist. So I have no.
No further questions, thank you.
Reps, briefly, Your Honor. Dr. Weinberg, are you familiar with the term manner of death?
Yes.
What is that?
Manner of death is a classification that I must do in my role as a medical examiner for the state of New Hampshire. Manner of death is part of my statutory role as a medical examiner for every single case that I am involved in. So we talked about cause of death before, right? That's the injury, the medical issue, the substance toxicity that accounts for a patient's death. Manner of death is a classification relating to the circumstances around a death. Whereas cause of death is free text, I can say or write whatever I want. Manner of death is, think of it like it's a drop-down menu. I only have 5 choices for how I classify manner of death in a case. Those options are natural, suicide, accident, homicide, or undetermined. And that is, again, it's a classification relating primarily to the circumstances of how an injury occurred for deaths that are non-natural.
Now, Dr. Weinberg, you mentioned natural, accident, homicide, suicide. Those are not legal determinations that should carry any weight with the jury, are they?
No, as far as I'm concerned, they are part of my role as a medical examiner, and they are not statements of, they're not legal determinations.
In your opinion, what was Caitlyn Naffziger's manner of death?
I classified the manner of death in this case as homicide.
Thank you.
be cross?
Dr. Weinberg, homicide is a classification on how the injury occurred. That's what you just told us?
Generally, yes.
It's not an opinion on whether a crime occurred, though, correct?
That is most definitely correct. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Nothing further.
Okay. Dr. Weinberg, be excused?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.